My name is Alina, and I am 34 years old. The evening my family finally saw my true worth, I stood next to a folding table in the church hall, holding a paper plate with gravy staining the sleeve of my gray sweater. My mother had just ordered me to move. She did not speak softly or gently. She said it loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Alina, do not sit at the front table. That spot is reserved for those who truly contributed." I can still hear the exact tone she used. Her voice sounded courteous on the surface, but carried a cutting edge that reached the people around the punch bowl. My brother's wife glanced at her phone, trying to conceal her grin. My father tugged at his tie and acted as if nothing had happened. My younger sister, Brielle, shot me that usual glance, the one that warned me not to cause any trouble. At first, I stayed silent. I simply stared at the place card in my hand. It was cream-colored paper with gold lettering, the kind my mother preferred to make everything appear more luxurious than it actually was. My name appeared in her careful cursive script. Alina, Overflow seating. Those were the exact words, not daughter, not family member, not committee helper, not honored guest, just Overflow seating. I flipped the card over, hoping for some error. There was none. The church hall carried the scents of roasted chicken, polished floors, and the vanilla candles my mother had arranged on every surface. Roughly 80 guests had gathered for my parents' 38th anniversary celebration. Neighbors, relatives, longtime friends, charity board members, former colleagues from my father's accounting office, and people who had watched me grow up. And every one of them witnessed me standing there with that card. I remember setting the plate down carefully, though my fingers trembled. Then I simply replied, "Okay." If you have ever felt like the least valued person in a space you quietly kept running, you know the heavy silence that settles over you in such a moment. That night had not started in the church hall. It had begun years before at my parents' kitchen table, where I gradually became someone they relied on for help, yet never someone they truly valued. I was raised in a household that placed great importance on how things looked. Not cruel or extreme, simply well-presented. My father, Daniel Whitcomb, had spent many years as a senior accountant at a local real estate firm. He was the type of person who thought a neatly ironed shirt could solve nearly every problem. My mother, Marlene, participated in committees for nearly every local fundraiser. Hospital events, scholarship galas, seasonal donation campaigns. She always knew which families had given generously, which ladies had repeated an outfit, and which attendees should sit up front to feel special. My brother, Graham, was their shining success. He had a booming laugh, a firm handshake, and the skill to make everyday work sound significant. He sold commercial flooring, but described himself as working in development solutions. My sister, Brielle, was attractive, well-organized, and married to an orthodontist. She shared matching family photos online with grateful captions, and then there was me. I was known as the quiet one. That was their polite description. When they felt less kind, I was called sensitive, difficult, too serious, not outgoing enough, intelligent but not friendly, supportive but not lively. I held a position as a records compliance specialist at a regional medical billing firm. The role was not flashy. Most people lost interest before I could finish describing it. I examined billing records, insurance papers, provider agreements, internal checks, and payment mistakes. My job involved the sort of details no one noticed until problems arose, but I excelled at it, extremely so. By age 32, I oversaw internal audit processes across 3 states. By 33, I had identified 2 significant billing issues that prevented millions in fines for my company. Lawyers, auditors, and hospital managers knew me as the person who could locate a single missing file among thousands. My family knew almost nothing about any of this, not because I kept it secret. They simply never inquired. What they did recognize was my reliability. When my parents needed assistance with my grandmother's Medicare documents, they contacted me. When Graham's wife struggled with a hospital invoice after their second baby, they reached out to me. When Brielle's husband required old tax donation records sorted for his practice, they called me. When my mother organized a charity event and needed spreadsheets fixed, donor records matched, and vendor bills corrected, she turned to me as well. I became the one who resolved hidden issues. The misplaced receipt, the incorrect deposit, the overlooked payment, the unbalanced guest list, the lost message, the awkward conversation others avoided. Yet in public, they never presented me that way. Publicly, I was just our Alina. She's quite skilled with documents, my mother would comment, using the same voice one might use for someone who neatly arranged pantry items. At the beginning, I convinced myself it was unimportant. I had my own place, my own career, my own small circle of friends. I had a modest balcony where I grew basil and mint in worn ceramic containers. I led a peaceful existence, and for years I believed quiet equaled calm. Then my father retired. That was when the weight shifted onto me even more. My parents had always spent a bit beyond their means. Nothing extreme, just better vehicles, extra trips, special drapes, and yearly contributions that kept them noticeable in important groups. After retirement, they faced more difficulties than they admitted. I knew because my mother began phoning me late in the evenings with minor crises. Could I explain the doubled insurance cost? Could I review a bank notice? Could I verify if a charity payment had cleared? And please do not tell Graham because he already carries enough pressure. That request came up frequently. Do not mention it to Graham. Graham stayed shielded from difficulties. I did not. I started handling minor expenses, a power bill, an overdue charge, a plumbing repair cost for their water heater. I never gave them cash in a noticeable way. I paid straight to the providers without fuss to spare them any discomfort. Then plans for the anniversary dinner emerged. My mother envisioned it as a family tribute to my parents, a gathering to celebrate their marriage, their place in the community, and their lasting impact. Those were her exact terms. She formed a planning committee that included Graham, Brielle, Graham's wife, Brielle's husband, and myself. From the start, however, I was not seen as part of the honored group. I was viewed as helpful family support. Graham picked the location and claimed he had bargained the rate, even though I located the church hall contact and fixed the contract details. Brielle selected the flowers and shared color scheme pictures online. My mother decided on the food and altered her choices 4 separate times. I managed the finances. Soon the bills began arriving in my inbox. At first I assumed it was an oversight. Then the pattern became obvious. The food service had my contact details. The printing company had my phone number. The rental office phoned me regarding the deposit. The performer sought approval from me. When I questioned Graham, he chuckled. "You're better at those tedious tasks," he remarked. "Don't pretend you don't enjoy being in charge." I recall sitting at my kitchen table with my computer open, studying the figures. The event was originally budgeted at $6,000. After my mother added extras, it approached $18,000. I advised her we should reduce the scale. She grew silent, which was always concerning. Then she responded, "Alina, your father has provided so much for this family. I do not believe one special night is asking too much." I covered the first major payment because the caterer was ready to withdraw. I assured myself I would receive repayment. I kept every record, not because I anticipated conflict. That was simply my habit. Records gave me security. 2 weeks prior to the dinner, I noticed something unusual. The charity board where my mother volunteered had approved partial sponsorship because she had described the event as a donor recognition gathering linked to their yearly community health initiative. That was inaccurate. It was a private family celebration. I learned this when a board member, Dr. Laurel Hayes, included me in an email requesting the complete vendor details. I read the message several times. Then I sat motionless. My mother had leveraged the charity's reputation to obtain reduced rates, complimentary decorations, and a partial venue contribution. She had also presented bills that I had already settled personally, suggesting the family still owed money. At first I wondered if I had misread it, so I double-checked everything. I examined each attachment, every bill, every message chain, every transaction record. The situation was straightforward. My mother had used my payments, led vendors to think the charity was backing it, and allowed Graham to appear as the primary supporter. There were repayment documents bearing my father's initials, although I knew he disliked digital correspondence and seldom signed anything online. One document listed me as volunteer treasurer. I had never consented to that role. I telephoned my mother that evening. She answered brightly as if all was fine. I asked why my name appeared on a repayment form. There was a brief silence. Then she replied, "Oh, do not begin this. It is merely administration." I said, "It carries my name." She exhaled. "Alina, this is precisely why others hesitate to involve you. You turn everything into a big issue." That comment remained with me, not because it was the harshest remark she had ever made, but because it revealed everything. To them, precision equaled burden. Setting limits meant creating scenes, inquiries showed disrespect, and my assistance was accepted only if it remained silent. I did not debate further. I requested she forward every form she had filed. She laughed shortly. "Certainly not," so I did what came naturally. I gathered evidence. I stored the messages. I saved the supplier contracts. I obtained my bank payment proofs. I printed the repayment documents. I assembled a neat folder containing dates, sums, names, and signatures. The container for all of it was a simple navy binder purchased from a stationery shop. Nothing flashy, no clasp, no outer title. Inside, the contents were perfectly arranged. That binder rested on the front seat of my car during the anniversary dinner night. I did not carry it to shame my family. I brought it because I had finally realized that when others grow used to taking advantage of your quiet nature, you should arrive prepared. The dinner unfolded exactly as my mother had planned. Gentle background music, white table coverings, gold-edged plates from the rental service, a presentation of my parents' wedding pictures displayed near the front. My father stood by the entrance welcoming arrivals like a respected elder. My mother moved gracefully between tables, touching arms, receiving praise, acting as if she had effortlessly coordinated every element. Graham showed up late and noisily. He embraced people with one arm while announcing, "We simply wish to create something memorable for Mom and Dad." That word, "we," carried heavy meaning in my family. Brielle wore a pale champagne gown and repeatedly noted how Graham had organized everything. I remained near the side wall, carrying updated seating plans because my mother had rearranged 3 tables earlier that day. No one expressed appreciation. That was typical. What felt different was the place card itself. Alina, Overflow seating. I discovered it on the registration table next to cards for distant relatives and late additions. Initially, I thought it was an error. Then my mother took it from me, looked at it, and confirmed, "Yes, that is correct for you." I met her gaze. She showed no shame. She appeared annoyed. I said, "I am not seated with the family." She gave a strained smile. "The front tables are completely reserved. They are filled with people I do not recognize." Her eyes narrowed. "Alina, do not create a scene tonight." Then came the statement, "Do not sit at the front table. That area is for those who actually contributed." A man from my father's previous workplace overheard. So did one of my mother's charity acquaintances. So did Brielle's husband, who suddenly focused intently on his beverage. I felt something inside me become steady, not shattered, but firmly settled. I placed the card into my bag, then I walked to the rear table. It sat close to the kitchen entrance. Servers frequently passed through, and the swinging door occasionally brushed the back of my seat. I sat beside a cousin I had not met in nearly a decade and a neighbor who inquired if I was still doing office work. I responded courteously. I ate part of a bread roll, then the toast started. Graham spoke first. He stood at the microphone with his assured expression and discussed sacrifice, family principles, and recognizing those who created our foundation. He declared, "When Mom requested my assistance to bring this evening to life, I understood I needed to take charge." The audience applauded. My mother wiped her eyes with a napkin. I observed from the distant table. My hands rested folded in my lap. Next, Brielle talked about affection and faithfulness. Then my father expressed thanks to everyone for attending. He praised Graham for being the son any father would desire. I looked at my plate. I was not shocked, but then my father mentioned something unexpected. He said, and naturally, "We appreciate the Whitcomb Family Foundation for backing tonight's gathering and promoting awareness about community health services." The room applauded once more. I held my breath briefly. No such Whitcomb Family Foundation existed. There was only my parents, tight finances, my credit card charges, and a charity board that had received false information. That instant I realized this went beyond a personal slight. This involved improper use of funds amid decorated tables. I rose slowly and headed toward the side corridor near the restrooms. My mother noticed my movement and quickly followed. "Elena," she whispered, gripping my arm, "whatever you are feeling, compose yourself." I calmly pulled her hand away. "You filed incorrect repayment documents." Her expression shifted momentarily. Then she smiled as if I were a misbehaving child. "This is not the appropriate time," I stated. "You involved my name." She moved nearer. "You would not grasp the larger context." That nearly made me smile, not from amusement, because grasping the larger context defined my daily work. Before I could reply, Dr. Laurel Hayes approached from the end of the hallway. She was in her late 50s, tall and poised, with silver hair in a neat bun. I recognized her from the email exchange. She glanced between my mother and me, then at the navy binder I held. "Elena," she inquired. My mother's face lost color. I answered, "Yes, Dr. Hayes." She stepped forward. "I hope to speak with you." I examined the supplier summaries earlier today and noticed some issues. My mother laughed hastily. "Oh, Laurel, not this evening. Elena tends to worry over details." "She is not really handling things at that level, Doctor." Hayes looked at me once more. I opened the binder. I offered no dramatic speech. I made no loud accusations. I simply gave her the opening pages. "These are the bills I covered myself. These are the repayment forms filed later. These are signatures I never approved." And this is the message where my mother named me volunteer treasurer without my consent. Dr. Hayes reviewed the first page, then the next. Her expression stayed mostly neutral, but her jaw became firm. My mother whispered, "Elena, enough." I kept my eyes on the doctor. Hayes asked, "Has anyone else reviewed this?" I replied, "Not yet." She closed the binder with care. "Then we must address it properly." She walked back toward the main hall carrying the binder. My mother hurried after her, speaking urgently. I followed them both. Graham stood at the microphone again, chuckling over a childhood memory when Dr. Hayes reached the platform. She did not interrupt him suddenly. She waited nearby until he noticed her. Then she said, "Pardon me, Graham, I require the microphone briefly." He looked surprised. The audience grew quiet. My mother stood frozen near the front table. Dr. Hayes introduced herself as chair of the Community Health Fund. Her tone remained steady, clear, and professional. She mentioned a significant inconsistency regarding the financial support and description of the evening's costs. She stated the board would temporarily suspend any connection to the event until all records could be examined. She added that any contributors who believed this was an approved fundraiser would receive direct follow-up. Then she looked toward the rear of the room. "Elena Whitcomb," she announced, "seems to have brought these matters forward and supplied payment details that were not previously shared with the board." All eyes turned my way. I disliked that attention. I disliked being the focus, yet I remained composed. Graham moved toward the microphone. His confident look had vanished. "Okay, there is clearly some mix-up," he claimed. "My sister manages documents. Occasionally she misinterprets details." Dr. Hayes regarded him directly. "Mr. Whitcomb, the materials are quite straightforward." That statement transformed the atmosphere, quietly but thoroughly. Guests began noticing the table settings, the arrangements, the printed programs, and the donation envelopes by the door. My father rose gradually. "Marlene," he said, not to support her, but seeking someone to clarify. My mother's face grew tense. She turned toward me and asked, "Are you satisfied now?" That was her first question, not whether the documents were inaccurate, not whether she had misused my name, not whether she had exposed me to trouble. "Are you satisfied now?" I answered no, and I was sincere. Nothing in that moment brought me satisfaction. I felt embarrassed, exhausted, and sorrowful in an old familiar way, but I was finished. Dr. Hayes inquired if I would supply copies to the board's legal team. I agreed. Graham mumbled about keeping matters private. My mother began to cry, but the tears arrived too late and seemed misplaced. Brielle continued murmuring, "This is all a misunderstanding," although she had not requested to examine any records. The dinner did not conclude abruptly. That would have been too neat. It came apart gradually. Guests stopped their meals. Several people departed without fanfare. One contributor approached the registration area and retrieved an envelope. My father's former colleague shook my hand by the exit and said quietly, "You handled that correctly," in a voice so soft I nearly missed it. My family said nothing to me as I left. That was acceptable. For the first time in years, I did not linger hoping to belong. I drove home with the Navy binder beside me and sat in my car for 10 minutes before heading inside. My phone received 17 notifications before midnight. Graham called me self-centered. Brielle claimed I had embarrassed Mom. My father left a message suggesting there were better approaches. My mother sent one text. After everything we have done for you, I read it twice. Then I set the phone aside. The following morning, I forwarded the complete records to Dr. Hayes and the board's lawyer. I also sent a brief note to my family. I will not address this over the phone. Do not use my name, signature, email, or payment details for any future gathering, account repayment, or family cost. That was all. No harsh words, no further explanation. The consequences stretched over months. The charity board started an official investigation. My mother stepped down before they could remove her. Several contributions needed to be refunded. My parents had to return money they had claimed incorrectly. It did not ruin them, but it altered how others perceived them.